You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org. This episode of Pizza Quest is brought to you by Central Milling. Hand-selected grain, expertly milled for passionate bakers. Visit centralmilling.com to learn more. This episode of Pizza Quest is brought to you by Forno Bravo, makers of the world's finest modular and assembled wood and gas-fired pizza ovens. Learn more about their products at fornobravo.com. Welcome to Pizza Quest. I'm Peter Reinhardt, and welcome back. I've got a really interesting episode today, one that I'm kind of excited about because I'm with Chef Ryan Hardy of Bar Pasquale, of Pasquale Jones, a whole bunch of restaurants in New York City. So you're in, in what, the Little Italy part of New York City.
Yeah, we're all the downtown stuff.
And you got all these restaurants going, but we haven't seen each other for 25 years.
I know.
We're finding out as we're reconnecting for today's show that you were a student at the California Culinary Academy when I was teaching there, and you were in my class. So. Yeah. And I'm wondering, 25 years ago, you must have been a kid, but hard to believe. So we got to catch up a little bit on that. Yeah. So you were a culinary student there for a while?
Yeah. And Peter, thanks so much for having me on. This is really cool. I'm a fan of the podcast and so much more. So really an honor to be here. I had gone to college. I went to Xavier University and finished at University of Kentucky, and grew up in the Midwest. Really had to get out of that part of the country and see something new. Drove to the West Coast, and I had put myself really through school by cooking and bussing tables and dishwashing and whatever I could do in the restaurant business and various other jobs. And when I went out there, I started building homes, believe it or not, and cooking at night, and decided there was something to this. I really loved the camaraderie, the militaristic hierarchy of restaurants, and I found that I was very detail oriented, and I loved how detailed things like cooking can be. And so I enrolled at California Culinary Academy, and I was, unfortunately, I think at the time we called them savory or sweet. I think that's how we referred to each other. I was a savory student. Otherwise you were baking and pastry, which was sweet. And so I was able to take one class in the other division, and it was your class. And I think at the time, if I'm not mistaken, you might have been working in a bread competition with France, yes, which was a big deal, right?
Yeah. I was getting ready to well, how did it work? I was competing in the James Beard National Bread Competition, and the prize was that you got a 1 week all paid experience to stage at any bakery in Paris that you could work out a deal with. And I ended up, and I won the competition. So I was in New York City, I baked my loaves off at Amy's Breads, up on in Hell's Kitchen. And then we carted down to the James Beard house in the snow, big snowstorm, ended up winning. And I got to go to Paris. And instead of doing like a stage at one place for a week, I asked the Nick Malgeri, who was running the whole show, if I could instead go to 5 different bakeries over 5 days, spread it out over 5 days, and do a different place each day. And
Incredible.
We did it up. So I got to meet Lionel Poulin and all these great bakers over there.
Yeah.
And so and it all started while I was teaching at the California Culinary Academy. So you were a culinary student, but you got to do the bread class. Was it sort of
did.
Fun class.
Yeah.
We were just getting it pioneered then. Back in the mid 90s, there weren't a lot of culinary schools teaching, quote, artisan breads. So we were moving the dial on all that. I'm so glad you got to be a part of that.
You were, and I've been fascinated with bread my whole life. I think it's something that it's one of the oldest foods out there. Obviously, it transcends. I believe that not to pull out that kind of theologian card for a second, but I do believe that anthropology is told through the story of food, right, from generation to generation, and I think bread is a part of that. Every single culture has their version of that, and bread is so central to the food that I create. In fact, carbs are, but we don't tell anybody that. And I think that we've been fortunate that that has been, renewed as of recently. I think COVID certainly changed a few things there in all of our restaurants, but our ability to spend time on those things, not just as consumers in our homes, but also as chefs in our restaurants. It's been something that's been really central to our restaurants
Yeah,
over the
and
last
not
few years.
only did you follow in sort of the breadcrumb trail, but it led you
Yeah,
into following me this other path that I've been on too. And now you're doing killer
I
pizzas
know.
of different styles, and I want to
Yeah,
talk about your menu at
yeah.
both Bar Pasquale and also Pasquale Jones, and
Thanks.
different. Where are you coming to us from at this moment? Are you in Pasquale Jones or Bar Pasquale?
I'm sitting in the bar right now. Bar Pasquale is right next door to Pasquale Jones. We're on what we call the Kenmare corner. We're in Little Italy, and Mulberry Street is to my right, and the corner of Kenmare, which is the Williamsburg Bridge coming across, is right
Yeah.
outside the window here. And so we do, you know, they're sister restaurants. They're joined underground. We share some kitchen and some storage space on both sides, and it was important as we, the original restaurant was Pasquale Jones next door. We opened it in 2016, and it was all about wood fired and Neapolitan food and pizza. And when we took this on, we built it during COVID, and a friend of mine asked me as I was building it, which had never occurred to me. He said, "So you're gonna have your pizza there, right?" And I thought, well, there's a line out the door for that side. That's why I was building it over here. And I said, oh
Uh-huh.
man, what am I going to do? I can't produce enough pizza over there. So I had to really think about it as I was
Yeah.
producing. And I said, I love Sicily. I'm so head over heels for Southern Italy and the islands there. I said, this really needs to be an ode to that as much as that is to Napoli and Campania in
So,
general.
so basically, you're covering, the Neapolitan Naples, world at one restaurant, and then jump over a
Yeah.
little bit of that little pond between the two, and so you get to spend some time in Sicily, kind of doing a deep dive
Yeah.
into the cuisine.
Yeah, I have over the years. My wife, about half of my wife's family, she grew up between the U.S. and Italy, and half of her family is from Campania. And so we spend a fair amount of time in and around that region, and have jumped over to Sicily a few times and really experienced so much of it. And I think debunking a lot of the myths about what Sicilian food is, and certainly what our idea. There's no such thing as Sicilian pizza, truly, but kind of understanding what they refer to as sfincione, which is kind of a snack that you eat as part of a meal, which happens to be pizza or similar to what we
Yeah.
consider pizza, is how the kind of the path started with this. And so I dug that up. I did a barnstorming trip back over there, took the team, said, look, guys, this is what I'm thinking. And I gave them the pitch on it. And then we came back and started experimenting with the pizza from there.
Was it a hard pitch to make, or were they all in from the
Oh,
start?
they were all in. They're like, wait, give me this straight. You want to take me to Sicily tomorrow? I said, yes,
Yeah,
we're going.
exactly. Yeah. I'm thinking it was an easy sell. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
easy.
so since we're on the Sicilian side of the walls right now in your place,
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what it is, what's distinctive and differentiating between Sicilian and the Neapolitan styles of cuisine.
I mean, gosh, to kind of back up, take a 38,000 foot view. I think what's distinct about pizza in general, it's all in the eye of the beholder. I mean, certainly no one knows that better than you. There are, gosh, there are two things that you're never going to win a battle on, right? And that's like trying to tell a New Yorker how much more New York you are, and then trying to convince somebody that this style of pizza is the best. You're never going to win. Everybody has their own version of it and loves. And I think taking that down to what Sicilian is, or what Neapolitan is, or what New York is, or what Detroit is, you can classify those, but there are so many subsets and tweaks within each one of those categories that make. I think that's what the love of pizza. That's why these things are so unique and so cool and exist all around the world in great ways. Sicilian to me it's a little bit taller certainly than what we think of as traditional, let's call it American or New York pizza slices, or certainly Neapolitan, which is quite soft and bready. It's closer to focaccia. It's a very thin focaccia, and it's a high moisture dough that is a long ferment in our case. And then their toppings, they often include tomato sauce. Usually that's where they stop, and
Yeah.
sometimes some hot chilies on there, maybe a little oregano or some garlic. But it's really pizza rossa in its classic form. And then we kind
Is
of,
it baked in a pan or on a hearth?
yeah, it's baked in a pan, always in a pan. The little bit of crust on the outside and texture that you get on the bottom of the pizza when you put it back on the hearth and reheat it is, I think, what makes it distinct. It is a pizza that has texture, a chew, but then also a crunch when you get to the edges. And the
Did
corner
you,
slice is always the magic.
the corner, of course.
Yeah,
Didn't you make one for yourself for breakfast? Could you still
I
have it?
did.
And
I do.
so,
I have it
so I'm going
here.
to describe it for those who are
Yeah,
listening on the audio version. I want to describe what
yeah,
I'm seeing there because it looks, when
yeah,
you open up this incredibly beautiful square or rectangular pizza, it looks kind
yeah,
of Detroit style in a sense. It's
yep,
got this frico around the edge with a big cheese, dark brown cheese crust, and
yeah,
then and it looks like it's about an inch and a half thick.
yep.
And then of course,
Right at
I'm,
an inch.
and
Yeah,
then I'm seeing cheese.
maybe less. Yeah.
Maybe. Is there sauce on there too, or just cheese? And
So
then
this
there's
one is a potato pie, and
that's
I thought,
potato.
yeah, this is a potato, so a little bit unique, and that you may or may not see something that has potatoes on it. Certainly in prosciutto, say in a place like Detroit, or in America in general, it's a very Italian thing. It's a very Sicilian thing to have potatoes, or Neapolitan thing to see like focaccia with potatoes lined up and a little
Yes,
sprinkle of
yes.
rosemary over top. What we do that's a little bit unique here, and then I'll talk about the dough, is that we because we have the wood fired oven next door, we cook the potatoes first in salt, and then we take them and we roast them in the oven over there. So the potato becomes a little smoky, and that becomes the basis. We spread that puree over the bottom of the pizza, olive oil, potato, salt only, and then we layer in fingerling potatoes on the top of it. So you get these little crispy, crunchy, potato chippy type potatoes on the top, and then we put Sandagnelli prosciutto on the top of this. I can't get the Sicilian prosciutto, unfortunately, in this country, the Nero di Sicilia. So this is what I think the best one that we get, which is a prosciutto Sandagnelli fuoco, which is cured on the bone, and it just has a much more rich flavor profile to it. And then, of course, it has pistachios drizzled over the top of it that are cured in a little bit of oil.
It's absolutely gorgeous, and it's
Thanks.
you sell it by the pie, by the square. How do people
Well,
buy
both. I think this is kind of a thoughtful process. So when you make pizza, of course, it's to me, it's all about the bread and it's all about the crust, right? And depending on the style of pie that you're making, I think there's a lot that goes into the crust itself. And so in this case, we do 10 by 10 inch squares so that everything is a corner slice. That's the magic, is that we cut it into quarters and then everyone gets a corner slice, because you want that maximum, for me, the crispiness of the edge, not the interior square, is really the magic moment that happens in there. So we sell it by the slice in the restaurant. Which is I don't know why people buy it by the slice when you could have a whole pizza, but they do, and so oftentimes a bigger table will get a couple of pizzas to share. But I think one of the things that's interesting about this style of pizza, even though it is a little bit thicker, it's very light, because it is focaccia style pizza, and so people think like, oh, it's richer, it's heavier, but in actuality, it's the same amount of dough weight that we put into the dough next door when we make a Neapolitan pizza, which is a little bit crazy.
so
Yeah.
is that kind of a long rise, the final rise in the pan before it goes into the oven?
Yeah, it is slow rise, as you call it, and
Yeah, the magic, the key to it all.
the key to it all. Yeah, it's a 3-day fermentation process that we put all of our pizza dough through. Different recipes. This has a little bit of whole wheat flour in it, just to give it a little bit more, flavor profile and structure to it. Of course, it's all high gluten flour, the rest of it. And then we use a sourdough starter on this side, and we use a little bit more commercial yeast on that side, just to keep it consistent, because we do, 300 pizzas a day, 400 pizzas a day over there. It gets to be a lot over time.
So at Bar Pasquale, the pizza menu mainly are these Sicilian style or
Yeah.
square pizzas.
Yeah.
Are you doing calzones there as well?
We do calzones, but the calzones over here are very particular. Pizza fritta is a really classic thing in Napoli and particularly in Sicily. And I had this amazing experience in Catania, which is a port city, a beautiful port city on the coast of Sicily. And we were stumbling around near the fish market looking for a place for lunch, and I had met a winemaker, and he's like, "Oh, go to this." My friend has a restaurant, not far from there, and so we went in there, And if you've ever been in Italy, when you walk into a restaurant, first of all, the lights are always like super bright, and there could be no one in there dining. And I always think about how did the logistics and financials work in these kind of places?
Right.
And there was no one in the restaurant. I was like, wow, it's, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There's no one here. But we'd been recommended to have lunch there, and so we sat down at a table. And of course, the owner comes over. It's like, I know who you guys are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm fortunate my wife speaks fluent Italian, so it's easy for us to kind of get through, navigate ourselves a little bit. And we sat down, and it was a new restaurant. He had just opened it a couple of weeks prior, and so he's still kind of getting his feet under him. Hence the empty dining room.
So, yeah.
And he's like, let me make a couple things for you. And we had this pizza frita, and it absolutely stopped me in my tracks. And so we talked to the chef for a little while, and incidentally, the chef was from Portugal, and my chef is from Portugal, Chris. So the two of them started speaking Portuguese, and it just goes back to the idea that pizza is universal. It doesn't matter where you come from. It travels the world. It's something that it's meaningful in every culture in its own way, and so we kind of brought that idea back, and so we do a pizza frita here, which is stuffed with anchovies and
So is that
the first sheep's cheese.
the one that blew your mind in Catania? Was that
Yeah.
the anchovy?
Yeah.
Because I saw on your Instagram, you making one of those.
Right.
It's simplicity and elegance all at once. For those,
Yeah.
most of our listeners probably know that pizza frita means deep fried, but just that's
Correct.
the process there real quickly.
Key factor, yeah. So it's Neapolitan dough that we use. So we use the Neapolitan dough from next door over here. We stretch it out, lay it down, obviously stuff it, roll it over, and then it's fried in olive oil, and then just a sprinkle of salt on it, and we just serve it with a knife. And the idea is when you cut it and you just open it up, it's like a taco. When you just hold this half of a steaming hot pizza.
It's all about the ooze factor.
Oh man, it's so good. So it's not a tomato sauce thing. This is we've done it a few different versions of it, but in my opinion, the one stuffed with sheep's cheese and anchovies is like.
Do you have a particular type of anchovy? I know a lot of people are very fussy about
very
anchovies they use. So
very particular. Yeah.
Do you use, and where do you get them? How do you source them?
There's a few different producers now. There used to only be one. Ortiz was the only one that we could get really in the country that was worthwhile. But their Cantabrian anchovies always, in my opinion, the best. They are quite expensive, but they're worth the money. You can actually buy the Ortiz brand in Whole Foods and in places, grocery stores around the U.S., which I think is amazing. It's one of the really great products that you can pick up, and it adds a lot of depth to not just to pizza. Although I've been known to put a couple of anchovies on like store-bought pizza from time to time to add a little flavor and depth, but it adds to pastas, it adds to stews, ragouts, all those kind of things that we make in the restaurants. Anchovies and chilies are things that we use for seasoning in our restaurants, and just about everything.
The ubiquitous aspect of anchovies.
Yeah.
So are these anchovies packed in salt or in oil?
Well, you can get them both ways. The classic Cantabrians that we get here are fillets packed in olive oil. It's a great question. They're salted first and then packed in olive oil, so they're ready to consume. Versus anchovies that are packed in salt, which you need to do some legwork. You got to take the bones out. You usually need to rinse them to use them. No less enjoyable, but the ones packed in olive oil are a little bit cleaner.
As you're describing all this, I want to just jump on a plane and as soon as I can. I'm hoping to get up this summer.
Please.
I'm down here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we're having good food, but there's nothing like the diversity and creativity that's going on. Just within a couple blocks of where you are, and in every square in New York City. I know you're in right now in Bar Pasquale, and in a second. We're going to take a break, and you're going to head over to Pasquale Jones so we can see that operation. For those who are watching, you can see in the background that there's a little kitchen activity going on, so we can see a little taste of it. But before we go to the break, I was wondering if you'd do me a favor. Would you mind? I don't know how hungry you are, but would you mind cutting us a little piece of that?
Are you kidding me?
Have some breakfast on us, and
I know.
And if you could hold up to the camera,
of course,
the crumb structure as well.
Yeah. So my guys did a great job cutting this off. So I'll just kind of get that a little bit closer so you can see.
It looks so creamy in the center.
It really is. I think, we've messed around with a lot that have a lot of different variations of air holes. And what we found here is that one that's very, very light, almost pillowy, soft to the touch, but allows us to get that really nice kind of layer of crunch on the bottom. So you get a nice bite to the bottom of the pizza without it being heavy. I think that's a really important part. And then you can kind of see the crust on the outside. One of the secrets to that, of course, is we do a little bit of provolone cheese just around the pizza, which then melts and helps give us that little bit of crunch around the outside without adding a lot of heft to the pizza.
So there's not a lot of cheese on the pizza itself. It's only around the perimeter.
Correct.
Frico. All right, here comes the crunch. You're taking a bite. Yeah. Oh, well, good. The crunch is coming through. I can hear the sound. So now I'm getting hungry. Yeah, and of course that's
prosciutto.
The prosciutto on top is just gorgeous, paper thin. So on the menu, this would be called what? Would this be called sfincione or something else?
We call it Sicilian pies here. Sfincione is, of course, what we refer to it as, and we talk about it to our guests and to our team members. But we try not to confuse anybody. It's another word they have to learn as guests. We just say, look, you're in Little Italy. These are Sicilian pies, and it's part of a meal. I think that's one thing just to leave on is that I think in a lot of pizzerias, certainly the more well-known ones, you're going there just to eat a pizza and have a beer or a glass of wine, and that's the meal. And I think something that's unique about our pizzerias, and I think that we do in America that you just don't see in Italy even, is that this is meant to be in Sicily. You just don't go to a pizzeria that's going to have sfincione. Sfincione is something you start with. You might have some fava beans and maybe a little, charred octopus or something. And then you'd have a little sfincione to kind of eat. And then you'd have a bowl of pasta and then maybe even, a piece of pork that's been grilled over wood. And that's kind of a classic, meal. And I think that understanding that pizza can be part of a meal is engaging as opposed to just the meal. And although it can be the star, I think it's meant to really be part of it as you transcend through an experience.
Well, do you have those other options? Do you do pastas and some entree courses there at Bar?
Yeah. No, of course. And listen, the whole reason I got into pizza, I'm obsessed with pizza. And we opened my first restaurant. I opened Charlie Bird 10 years ago. And when we got finished cooking at nighttime, we just wanted to go eat pizza. We didn't want anything that we could do that wasn't what we were doing. We wanted to go drink a great bottle of wine and eat pizza. And what we found was that there were a lot of pizzerias in New York City. Not a lot of them had great wine. There were a few in Brooklyn that did have great wine lists, but they were hard to get to, or they closed a little bit earlier. When we get there, they didn't take reservations and those types of things. And so we thought, man, we really need to do great pizza and a great wine list in Manhattan. And really more specifically, really in Little Italy, we really felt like Mulberry Street was the spot. So we fought hard to get a space there, and that's what it's about. I think you should be able to drink a terrific bottle of wine, be it from Europe or from America, and have a great wine list, and be excited about eating pizza. And it's served the right way, and it's served in great stemware, and the whole experience is not just, we don't just fall short and you're forced to drink a beer or a soda. Because all they care about is the pizza, right? And I think sometimes those cultures are one-sided a little bit. So that's something that we really focus hard on in these restaurants.
Well, in addition, you mentioned Charlie Bird, which is your first restaurant. Is that's still happening? Charlie's still going?
Oh yeah. We're about to celebrate June 4th. Is our 10th anniversary.
So I'm seeing a list of your whole restaurant group. It's a Delicious Hospitality, the group.
Yeah.
The DHG. Do you guys got Charlie Bird? You got Pasquale Jones. You got Legacy Records. What is Legacy Records?
So music is a real passion of mine, and in all the restaurants. And so each restaurant kind of has a spirit animal, if you will, that we tag onto and kind of follow the playlist through that. And Legacy was an old recording studio where many famous artists recorded albums and songs. And
you built it right there.
So we took it over. It's on the west side of Manhattan on 38th and 10th. And it's a very, very cool spot. Yeah.
And then what about Ada's Place?
Ada's Place is a cocktail bar that's upstairs from Legacy Records. It's a real throwback to some of the classic cocktail bars. Come on, cocktail culture. You got to have a cocktail before you can go have great pizza or great pasta. Yeah.
Well, you're growing an empire there, and it's not just in Little Italy. It's you're covering the city, which is really exciting.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
well, I want to get over to Pasquale Jones and see what you're doing over there. So we're going to take a little
Great.
break right now. We're with Chef Ryan Hardy of all the restaurants we just mentioned. He just took a bite and made us all jealous of this Sicilian pizza that looks to the naked eye like a Detroit style pizza with that
Yeah,
cheese edge, and it looked awesome. A little bit of Sicily, a little bit of a little bit of you really in this
yeah.
pie that you brought back from Sicily. So Ryan, let's continue this conversation in part two of our conversation with Ryan Hardy, and join us back in part two. This episode of Pizza Quest is brought to you by Central Milling, hand-selected grain, expertly milled for passionate bakers. Central Milling is the farmer, the miller, and the baker working together to preserve American farmland for tomorrow while providing the highest quality flour and grains for the bakers of today. Dating back over 150 years, Central Milling is built on generations of knowledge, and they know that premium flour starts at the source. Employee-owned, Central Milling works directly with their farmers to sustainably grow grains that have exceptional flavor, nutrient content, color, and baking performance, which results in one of the largest selections of premium specialty flour and grains in the country. Hand-selected for the highest baking qualities, milled, cracked, or blended slowly to minimize heat generation, then bake-tested for performance. Learn more about Central Milling and their products at centralmilling.com. Forno Bravo produces the world's finest modular and assembled pizza ovens. Since 2003, Forno Bravo has provided beautiful and well-made wood and gas-fired brick ovens to homes, outdoor kitchens, restaurants, and mobile businesses around the world. Forno's ovens stretch from basic to professional models. Cast refractory, steel, and brick cores, modular kits, and fully assembled ovens to meet any requirement, as well as custom tile patterns, colors, logos, and exterior shapes. Emphasizing variety as well as quality and craftsmanship, Forno Bravo creates the perfect aesthetic for your space as well as solid technology. After thousands of satisfied customers, Forno Bravo is just getting started. Learn more about their products at fornobravo.com. Welcome back to part two of today's episode of Pizza Quest. I'm Peter Reinhardt, and I'm here with Chef Ryan Hardy. We've traveled from theological Jesuit university studies to culinary schools to somehow New York City, where you are growing an empire of restaurants that sound very exciting. It's just amazing. Since in the 25 years since we last knew each other,
Yeah.
the whole world has opened up for you. It seems like you're one of the major players now in New York City.
Thank you for saying that. There are so many great restaurants in and around the country now. I think when I was young, when I was in San Francisco, back when I first met you, you really needed to go to one of the major cities. Telephones didn't exist. Certainly, social media didn't exist. People still used encyclopedias back then.
That's
And
right. What's that?
yeah, what's that? And
Is that anything like Wikipedia?
Yeah, I couldn't afford to buy the books that I wanted back in those days. So I would go to the bookstores and I would take a notebook with me and I would write down recipes in these books
Wow.
that I could then go, try back home. But the reason I mentioned that is that you would have to travel to France or to Italy or to Spain or to South America or to some of these places or New York City if you wanted to go work for the best people that were out there. You had to go learn it directly from them, and things have changed obviously in the last decade for sure. But for me, I think being able to take people on a journey where it doesn't involve your phones or it doesn't involve so many of the distractions and beautiful things that we have in today's society becomes really, really important. But New York City was always a love affair for me. There was a place that when you were a line cook in San Francisco back in those days, you knew that it was San Francisco, a little bit of LA, and New York. Those were the major players. And now there's so many great restaurant cities around our own country and, of course, around the world you can go to whichever Portland you choose to be in,
Right, right,
whichever
right.
side of the country you're on. Great food in both those cities. You can go to the middle of Texas. You can go to all over the country, and including here. In New York, it used to be really very specific to New York City, and when you got out in some of the outlying areas, things were a little bit more localized, and now we're seeing terrific restaurants in the farming Hudson River Valley or out in Long Island, in North Fork and the South Fork
Right.
and places like that that really
So
have
many
terrific restaurants now.
so many forces have converged, to bring
Yeah,
about yet another new culinary sort of renaissance for us, and one of which is the sustainability movement and this the appreciation of artisan farming, milling, you name it, um, converging with all the talent. And there's the media side of it with the travelogues and the work of Tony Bourdain and Food Network, and so everybody, the world has become, it lives in your living room now. And
yeah.
if you're lucky, you live near a great restaurant where you can also go out and experience it for real and not just virtually.
And that's the thing about food is that you can look up on Instagram, I Massanelli in Italy, but you have to go there to
Yes,
taste it, and
yes.
you've got to experience Caserta and the region and drive around it, and then get to the pizzeria and sit down and understand that particular pizza if you want to eat it. You can't box it, you can't take it out, you can't do anything. You've got to travel to those things. I think that's one of the really cool things that exists still in food, is that we can read about it, we can take recipes, we can do whatever you want, but until you eat it, you don't have a good frame of reference.
Well, in the few minutes that we had in our break, you managed to travel from Sicily to Naples, and
Yeah.
you're in the other side of the wall of your restaurants there. So you're
Hmm.
in Pasquale Jones now, and behind you, I'm seeing two beautiful wood burning ovens. Can you talk a little bit about the ovens, and then we'll talk a little bit
Yeah.
about what goes into those ovens?
So this is a corner space, as I mentioned, on Mulberry Street, that was fortunate that had exhaust for wood burning, and it's now been all but virtually outlawed in New York City.
Is that right?
Wood burning is just about gone. If you have it, you're grandfathered in. Good, don't ever change it. And if they're just about to really look at gas regulations and in residential new buildings, and really remove gas from a lot of buildings going forward in New York as well. Not to say those are bad things, but I understand just the value of being able to cook with solid fuel in this day and age. It's a challenge, and so being able to do that, certainly in the middle of New York City with everything going on around you, is
Yes.
really a bit of a miracle. So when we looked at this, we had a bit of a design play to move here. We had the ability to put one big oven in the middle of a room, right, and kind of have everything flow through that. You have to make a decision when you have a wood oven. Are you going to be pizza, or are you going to try and cook everything else? And a lot of restaurants will do, oh, I'm going to put a little steak in there with the pizza, or I'm going to cook some vegetables in there on the side of the pizza, those kind of things. And when you go and you visit Ferrara and you go meet Stefano in Naples, they insist. They're like, we will not sell you an oven if you're going to put anything in this but pizza. You will ruin the deck, and you will not be able to cook pizza perfectly the way that these ovens are designed. And I have to say that was something that was really a big concern for us. But bigger than that, we just looked at the size of the ovens, and ovens come in all different sizes in diameters, and we really looked at the ability of a pizzaiolo to manage a certain number of pies.
Uh-huh.
That's important, and it's something that I don't think we talk about enough in the world of pizzas. I think there's a point of pride in Italy that a great pizzaiolo can produce one pie a minute, right? Pies are constantly coming out of the oven and then going out. That's good, but is volume really the end game? Is that really the goal here, or is it quality? And so for us, I said, look, I think a great pizzaiolo can manage 3-4 pizzas max at a time. There's just no reason to push it beyond that. And so we went with a smaller diameter oven, which allowed us actually to put two ovens in, one for pizza and one for everything else. So we have the wood roasting oven here that we keep at about 585, 650 degrees on this side. That allows us to get that smoke. We can cloche the oven. We can, kind of finish our proteins, smoke them there in the last second. do some of the things that we'd like to do. And then on this side, we really run the pizza oven. So this is upwards of 850.
Are they fundamentally different oven designs, or are they the same oven?
No, exactly the same oven. Both are Stefano Ferraras that we installed. We've replaced the floors only once in them, which happens over time.
So the Ferraro folks didn't mind that you were going to have one dedicated to non-pizza products.
Exactly. They were like, well, as long as you're not making pizza, you can do whatever you want. But
they probably drop in from time to time to make sure you're not violating their rules.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, there are several great oven producers out there. I think there are 3 or 4 that really rise to the top, and I think these guys are one of them. But starting with a great oven is really critical. It is. I will say, with the new technology that's out there, some of the home ovens. I won't mention names to give people too many props, but I have cooked in those ovens at people's homes just to try them out and have some fun with them, and they produce really good quality pizza. If the dough is good, the ingredients are good, and you've got a little bit of skill and knowledge on it, you can produce great ovens without having, something that's been shipped around the world and has, volcanic bricks on the inside.
Well, we could probably spend an entire whole show talking about this other issue you raised, which is the challenge that wood fire cooking is facing right now. Because if New York City is already starting to shut it down, then it's only a matter of time. I know the gas industry is facing the same thing. That's a whole topic. So we got to have you back another time and maybe get a couple of people and have a roundtable and talk about this.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Because these oven companies have to be also going, what the hell is going on right now? If we can't produce, or if we can produce them, but there's no one that's allowed to actually get a permit to use them, what are we going to do? So you gave me an idea for a future show, which hopefully will get you to be part of a discussion on this.
I love the panels.
So these ovens, especially your pizza oven, is dedicated to Neapolitan style pizzas, and I saw on your menu, some really creative work. I noticed that you're using anchovies. Right? We talked about anchovies.
Always, always.
Anchovies is a big part of it. But can you talk a little bit about your pizza philosophy and your fermentation philosophy on your dough and the type of flour you're using?
Yeah. We use Caputo flour here. We've messed around with a few different high gluten flours and hydrations over the years, and we've worked with Pizzaiolo not only in Italy but of course in the U.S. We worked with Savoy in Japan, also came over and cooked with us, and we kind of did a collaboration for a few days and really understood their dough and how they make their doughs. And it's once again, that's one of the coolest parts of the pizza world, is that it's this subculture, it's this language that's bubbling like the dough itself, with creative ideas and interesting ways to do it. I think there's just so much talent out there, and so many different variations on all sides of it. We've got Mangieri and his restaurant down the street here, which is just like the guy's like Beethoven and what he does with dough. And then you've got the other side.
I referred to him in one of our earlier episodes as the Chopin of pizza.
There you go. Exactly right.
He's a minimalist. He just focuses on one style, and he just goes deep.
That's it. He's like, that's all I'm doing today. And he's got
Anthony Mangieri,
It's just incredible. And then you've got the other side of that, which is like we're New York Neapolitan, and we're going to cook kind of Neapolitan pizza. We're going to do it kind of in a New York fashion. So I don't know where we fall on that dial. I think we're maybe a little bit more on the religious zealot style side of it. But
Caputo has done an amazing job of getting their flour over 10, 15 years ago. Hardly anybody knew about that brand. And it was very difficult hard to get. Even if you knew about it, you couldn't get it. Now, you must work with Orlando Foods as one of your brokers.
Yep, we do. And we tried a lot of local milled stuff in New York, and we do that. We have a bakery as well uptown above Legacy Records. And we use a lot of flours for that, and we're going back to experiment for some of the doughs that we do here. It's like, how can we start, now that we've had a decade of really working on this stuff, how do we start to work in more of those things? The problem that we find is consistency is a real challenge when you're putting out pizza doughs. We'll do anywhere. A slow day for us is a couple hundred pizza doughs. A really busy day for us could be 300 or 400 pizza doughs. And so when you've got that kind of volume, how do you produce that consistently day over day? How does a pizzaiolo react to it? You know, if it's just myself or just Chef Chris or just Chef Stefan, who's over here in the off the picture as well. If it was just us making the pizza every single day, every single pie, that would be different. But I think, you know, being able to teach other people and have other pizzaiolo come in who are bringing their own influence and look at the dough, we want to provide some consistency through that. And that's really why we think the Caputo has been really terrific for us.
So how do you handle your dough? What's your sort of life cycle of your dough from start to finish?
Great question. Our dough is obviously mixed downstairs. We have a kitchen downstairs. It is mixed. We don't mix by hand. We mix in a mixer. Just flour and water to get it started with. Really mix that. Get the hydration going first. I think we're at 62.5% water on flour. We're kind of experimenting with a few more doughs that are a little higher hydration, which we've had some success with in the past, and kind of starting to, you know, experiment with. The seasonality, of course, is always a thing because humidity in the air, humidity in the rooms downstairs, you know, natural temperature, even though our rooms are controlled, you're still going to get those hot days, a lot of deliveries happening, you know, those kind of things. And so you still have to kind of control it. But anyway, then we add the yeast and we go through autolyse for a period, and then I think it's 20 minutes just to kind of like, you know, let everything nestle together, and then we bring it up, add the remainder of the water, salt, and mix that together until we, you know, really have that dough form, which I think is another 20 minutes or thereabouts. No, I think it's a shorter time. I think it's about 7 or 8 minutes on that one. And then we let that bulk ferment. So that sits out for about 2 hours until we're really starting to see the maturation come alive there. And then we cold ferment that overnight. We ball it the second day, and in the boxes, and then the third day, you know, in the evening is when it's ready for use. So we're constantly making dough, because if we're open for lunch and dinner, it can't be, oh, we made this night on Tuesday, use it for Thursday lunch. It's got to be night on Tuesday. You know,
you've got dough at different stages. You've got to have space for all that dough.
You got to have space for that stuff. Yeah, and that's another challenge. You know, places like New York don't have a lot of space, and you know, it's a real premium to be able to do that. So we're constantly moving dough into different life cycles.
Well, before we actually make a pizza with you, which I see your chef Chris is back there.
We're getting there.
Went up for some, and we'll see it because in the photos they're gorgeous pizzas. Obviously, beautiful leoparding and everything. But not everybody who uses the 00 flour goes through the long 3-day process that you go through.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit in your discovery of you know, nailing your dough.
Yeah.
Why you decided, and are you noticing differences if you just take it on the second day? Because for some people the second day is enough, and
second day's plenty.
Go to 5 days. What are you seeing the differences?
For us, I really want that flavor, you know, maturity in there, because we're not doing it. We do a sourdough starter next door. We don't do it over here, and we're using commercial yeast here, which you know, you're obviously going to start with a consistency product. We started off with a starter when we opened the restaurant, and we just had too many variations in the beginning.
Right.
That was a challenge for us. You know, we got to pay rent, so we got to be open. You know,
and you have to have control too, and control is such a big factor.
So we're you know, like I said, we're pushing the zealot side of things, but there's a business to run, and we're kind of you know, dialing it in there and saying, how can we give the best possible product that is extraordinarily authentic, and you know, we don't go outside the lines on toppings too much, but can really give us a great consistent product. So for us, we just did it through a trial and error. I think as the yeast, you know, really develops and into that third day, you know, I know I'm talking to the expert here, but I really look at the balls of dough, and you can just see them kind of rise, their tension when they're new. Even the next morning after you've balled them up, they're still quite firm, and then you see them kind of ease by the afternoon, and then they really relax those shoulders as you kind of get towards midnight, and you know, and you're ready to start using them the next day. I actually prefer the 3-day and even into 4-day on the dough, where it's really getting old. You really get that super puff on the outside of the dough, because everything, the elasticity of the dough starts to relax quite a
Yes.
bit, and as all of that stuff gets consumed by the yeast over time. And if you get the hydration level right, it takes nothing to open those doughs. You just kind of like boop boop boop, and you barely have to slap it to open that up, and you get
Because
that
the
beautiful cornichon
enzymes
on the
have
outside.
totally relaxed the
Yeah,
protein so that they're
consumed
just,
it. Yeah.
yeah, very
So
easy to.
whereas I think a New York style, which is like I talked about in that dial, something that's maybe a little bit more traditional New York, is going to have a lot of that gluten. They're making it same day, or they're letting it rest
Right.
overnight and using it the very next day. And it's that stuff you could slap, you could spin it, you could twirl. You're never going to poke a hole in it because it's got such strength to that dough
Right. Right.
that you see those videos of the guys like twirling it between their legs and that kind of stuff, and it's cool to watch. But you can make very, very thin pizzas doing that, of course, and get that crackling crust. I mean, there's a lot of value to that protein structure. But for us, that really traditional side of things is it's meant to be bread. I mean, that's really the definition of pizza. Is it's meant to be bread that's topped with some beautiful stuff. And so I think owning that was how we really got to that 3-day fermentation.
I would think that with a long extended fermentation that you have, you're only really using just a very small amount of yeast. Can you talk a
Very
little bit
small.
have you broken it down into percentages or anything like that?
Yeah, I think it's like 0.12% yeast
Yeah.
in our
Fresh
ratio,
yeast
so
or
it's
instant
tiny.
yeast, dry yeast?
We use the Red Star instant yeast, yeah, and
Okay,
so it's so fresh yeast would be what is that, double or 2.5 times that, but it's a tiny amount. In fact, it kind of makes me laugh because when I make like traditional Easter breads and stuff, it's about 4 times the amount.
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Of yeast it is, and you're like, wow, it's really a thimbleful of yeast, more or less, that goes into 20 kilos of flour.
That's cool because this balancing act of time and temperature and ingredients. There's an infinite number of variations that you can do with that, but time
Yeah,
is the ingredient that most people don't think about. And when you introduce time to it, then you have to adjust the other ingredients.
yeah,
And so it's so cool to know that it just takes that little bit of yeast, to raise the loaf, then to make it happen. And
I know. Something I learned from you when I took your class all those years ago was you don't even really need the yeast. I mean, if you put those ingredients together and just let it sit long enough, it's going to find its way.
eventually
And
it
it's
will
gonna,
ferment
and
itself.
it's going to do it. And we put that in obviously to kind of control the process and allow the petri dish, if you will, and the controlled environment to kind of mature. But yeah, it really takes very, very little. And I think part of it is that hydration rate too. Is that
Yes.
it's got plenty of water to circulate and really help as it matures.
Well, back when you were a student at the CCA, as we call it, the California
Yeah,
Culinary Academy, and I mean, this was really early in the artisan bread movement. Most people didn't even realize the importance of the enzymes that are built into. And we had a moment. You may have been there at the school when this happened, where we had a visiting author come through, and we were talking about how loaves brown up, and some brown up better than others, and why do you think that is? And she just threw off sort of the comment that, well, some of them may have had more malt than the other active malt, diastatic malt, and maybe the one that's not dark enough, maybe you could just bump the malt. And somehow, like, these light bulbs went off for me, and all of a sudden, I started down this track that's like the rabbit hole of enzymes, and I realized this is the missing ingredient. This is the key to the whole thing: is understanding how enzymes affect dough. Not enzymes that you necessarily have to add, which most flour
right.
companies do. They add malted barley for the enzyme, but there's already enzymes in there. And then one of the ways is to give the enzymes time to do their job. And all of a sudden, this whole notion of, why longer, slow fermented doughs are better is that the enzymes are able to release flavor that you can't get to if you try to do it quickly.
Yeah, I love that, and I think you've talked about this a little bit on your podcast, but the idea that you're breaking down gluten structures as well, which then become much more consumable to human beings the longer that fermentation goes. There's a lot of doctors out there, a couple famous ones that we know that have done quite a bit of research on this and have really talked about that being a method to being able to consume bread for people who are maybe slightly intolerant is a good way to say it. to some of it. We're working on that actively to kind of understand how do we work that into the world of pasta? How do we kind of understand this in a better sense?
Yeah, because
we
pasta is also a big part of your menu too.
yeah, of course. And so anyway, it's interesting because I can tell you that I have two stomachs. I have one for pizza and one for everything else. I could eat a 10-course tasting menu and then I could go eat pizza afterwards. But
You're
if
a
I
ruminator.
reverse it, yeah, if I reverse it and I eat pizza that's not long ferment, I'm like, oof, man,
There
I
you go.
feel
Yeah.
stuffed.
Yeah.
But when I eat long ferment breads in general, I can just keep going. It makes sense in the scientific world. So it's kind of fun to.
You're going to have to leave your two stomachs to science when the time comes. So they can break that down. Hey, here's why.
I think
Yeah,
I was going to say, I think you touched on something really interesting when you said, leoparding, and I know a lot of people, listeners that follow your podcast know what that term means. It's something we talk a lot about in here. We use the word suntan. That's a bad word. We use the word leoparding to kind of understand what the spots are on the outside of the dough. And I think a lot of that comes, we really see beautiful leoparding and dough structure changes when we get to that third day, when the enzymes have really consumed a lot of that and created, freed up some of the sugars and some of the other cool things that turn out from the digestion process, and it really helps us. Of course, that it comes from the temperature of the oven. Of course, it comes from the dough itself and how it was made. But I think you're seeing a lot of that. That not necessarily through a malting process, of course, but through that long slow rise.
Interesting. Well, your oven is glowing behind you. I can see.
Yeah, let's check it out here and let's see if we can get a pizza.
What's your typical baking timber? What are you shooting for before you?
So this is shooting at the very center, which is near the fire, is going at 920 now. That's high. We don't normally run it that high. The zones that we cook in are shooting at 830, and that's about right for us. What we do in this restaurant is something that's maybe a little bit different. I don't know if I coined this term, but I like the idea of it. As I call it, Neo New York pizza, and the idea that it's 100% Neapolitan from start to finish. We just run the oven a tiny bit lower so we can get a pizza that you can pick up and fold. That's interesting to me. Is it can't be dry, but I don't want a pizza like they serve in Naples that you got to eat a knife and fork, eat the center, and pick that up. New Yorkers don't care for that style.
Exactly. I think what you're recognizing is the American palate there, and
a little bit, yeah.
So you got
to play the crowd a little bit.
A little compromise their happy balance, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, like Nancy Silverton, for instance, she'll make her version of a Neapolitan pizza, or what you call it Neapolitan-ish, but she bakes it for 5 to 6 minutes, because she wants the emphasis to be on each slice being able to stand out straight and have a crunch factor still, but it still looks like a Neapolitan pizza.
I know, and I love Nancy. We actually just did a Pasquale Jones pop-up in LA at Pizzeria Mozza this past weekend, which was so much fun. And it was fun to cook in that oven and kind of play with that lower temperature. And what we did was we said, well, what if we go up 50 degrees? Let's try your pizza dough and we'll try our pizza. Okay, what if we go up 100 degrees? Let's try your pizza dough and let's try our pizza. And so we had a lot of fun kind of messing around with the chef team there and seeing how that.
Were you there for
out.
the LA Pizza Festival? Were you?
No, we weren't. We were there for. We did a private event where they did a buyout. They wanted to bring us out there, and so we decided, let's do a collab while we're there. And so the next night was open to the public, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh,
all right, Chris is gonna make a pizza here.
All right, let's do it.
Go ahead, top the pizza. I'm gonna take it like this and kind of show you guys. You get to see Chris's hands
on the pizza now, so I'm going to describe for listening on the audio version. So we've got the shell's been stretched out to looks like about 12 inches or so.
12 inch. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And a beautiful, vibrant red sauce. Are those tomatoes ones that you bring in from Italy, or
San Marzano? And then for I'm sure listeners who are real pizza lovers, they're never cooked. They're raw pizza tomatoes. We clean the tomatoes up, mill them. I like a little bit of the seed and some of the texture that comes through in the milling process. I'm a fan of that. Then we put on 2 different types of mozzarella, mozzarella di bufala. And of course, the Fiore. in there,
Ciabatta.
and then
So you've got both buffalo mozzarella and cow's milk mozzarella going on here in
correct.
little cubes
Yep.
and then I see
And then
some leaves of basil.
yeah, leaves of basil, pinch of Parmigiano,
Some Parmesan.
and then a drizzle. We use a really great oil from Puglia, this family, which I'm in love with, called De Carlo. And the De Carlo family's been making olive oil since 1600. We try and take a trip there every year and see the team
nice.
and taste the oils, go for harvest when we can.
Fantastic.
I'm gonna put this back here and let Chris get in here.
Chris has got it onto. He's moved the pizza onto the peel. Looks like a classic margarita pizza going into the oven, and sliding off the peel into the oven. And what's your typical bake time? Would you say?
Oh, 90 seconds thereabouts.
So it's a little bit cooler than say the 900-degree zone, but it's still fast enough to fit within the, what would you call it, the Naples rules, you know?
Yeah, exactly. 90 seconds. Maybe 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes on it. This particular one, since this is the first pizza that we're cooking, we haven't cleaned the floor of the oven yet. We haven't done a few things, so we'll kind of see how this comes out. We have a couple of goes here.
We're your beta test today on the oven.
Yeah, exactly. Normally,
so it must be getting close to opening time for you guys too. Or what time do you start serving?
We don't open for lunch on Wednesdays just yet. We're just Saturday and Sunday post-COVID hours, dinner 7 nights a week, lunch on the weekends. But we're just about to open for lunch. Today's May 10th. I think it's not Mother's Day, it's the following. So we'll be open 5 days for lunch starting in a couple weeks.
Well, I'm glad we got you on before then.
I know. As this pizza comes out, you can see some of the leoparding there. Yeah. I'm not sure if you can see it.
Chris is giving it a little rotation.
He's going to spin it around.
Yep. And we're seeing the browning, the leoparding on one side, the side closer to the back wall. So he's moved it around. We're getting
wall and
more even bake. And then at some point, I'm guessing he's going to dome it. Do you think? Yeah,
he'll dome it right at the end. And the doming is what kind of helps us control a few factors in there. One is that final kind of kiss of melting the cheese or dehydrating the pizza. We work with a few different toppings here. One of them, for example, is clam. That's the signature of the restaurant.
I noticed that your clam is a big part of your menu, and once I saw that, it's like you had me at clam pizza.
So and I think the ability to put clams on a pizza, it doesn't go with red sauce. It has to go with panna, which is cream that gets put on the pizza first. But then you've got whipped cream that has to deflate and then reduce. Otherwise, you get a really soupy pizza. So you've got to get that dehydration just right. And so we'll dome it just to kind of like give it a little kiss, and sometimes let it sit in the window for just 10 seconds while it just kind of sits there and bubbles, and then it comes back. All right, pizza just came out. He's cutting it now.
So can you get the camera to?
He's going to bring it right over here.
Okay, bringing the pizza. So it's pulled out. It took less than 2 minutes to bake for sure. Now we've got so there. We're looking at your pizza now, and for those who can't see this, I'm going to describe it. We're seeing again those leopard spots all around the cornice. You got a great pop in the the perimeter. The cornicione is popping. The cheese is all melting, gooey like. And how's the undercrust? There you get some browning on the undercrust as well. Yeah,
I mean, like I said, this is we look out for stuff like this, which is a little bit of a dark spot. We didn't clean the oven floor because we were firing it up right as we got on the air here. So this kind of stuff will take care of itself. But typically,
I love it when it gets dark on the bottom, even if it's
a little bit of. But what you see here is you can actually pick this pizza up. And although it's quite soft in the middle, it's just firm enough that it holds that edge. That's what we're looking for.
And you're able to fold it in your hand, but handhold, so
that's New York,
straight out.
Right? Yeah, that's New York. You got to be able to pick your pizza up in New York. If you give people a knife and fork, what is this? I don't know what to do with this thing.
That's you, John Travolta, walking down the street eating your place. So now you get the best part. You get to taste it, and there you go. So and of course
that's great. And I'll kind of show you some of the cornicione, which is
there we go. So now
right on the side.
We're looking real close up at the cornicione, and it's aerated. It's opened up like a ciabatta bread. It's like the best ciabatta you ever had.
Yeah, and we force it down a little bit because obviously we just cut it, but you kind of get the idea there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got the flat part and then the cornicione, which is a real technique thing, and it's something that we focus on a lot here in the restaurant. This is great, Chris. Thank you. Which is how you open the dough, and if you open the dough a couple of different ways, you can really force the air out of the dough. And if you, for example, if you take a rolling pin and open the dough, it's a very, very different experience with your finished product. Of course, it's a whole different pizza than how we open the dough. And so there's the slap technique. Of course, you kind of open it and over the back of your hands, but protecting that cornicione before it goes in the oven, I think is a important part of the rising process.
So you showed us your margarita, classic margarita pizza there. Now, I want to go back to the clam pizza because I was curious when I was reading the menu. Are those clams in the shell, and what kind of clams are you using, or are they out of the shell and just? Man,
I'm so glad you asked that, Peter. And by the way, we didn't rehearse this at all.
No, but
So
you got to know if you're talking clam pizza, I'm going to be like totally
all over that.
Yeah.
So first, you need to know that clam pizza is a very New York thing. And when I first started coming here, by the way, Lombardi's Pizza, which is by most accounts the very first pizzeria in the United States, is one block up from here.
Right.
And so I came. Yeah, I ate Lombardi's so many times when I first came to New York, and I just loved it. I thought it was the quintessential pizza. It was the bar to measure all others. And although I knew of Neapolitan, I certainly loved it. To me, I was a neophyte in New York, and I thought that was really, the coal-fired stuff was so cool. And I think when you look at a menu like that, and you're new to New York and you see a clam pizza on there, I was like, that sounds weird. Like, who orders a clam pizza? Right. And then I finally ate one in various places around the city, and I was blown away by the opportunity of putting seafood on pizza. Had never really occurred to me as a more traditionalist.
Right.
And so when we opened here, I said, guys, we're gonna do clam pie. Like, this is this is gonna get real. And we're like, oh man, like, really, how are we gonna figure this out? And so we tested a few different ways, and yes, to answer your question, we steam little neck clams. We take them out of the shell. The juice that comes off of those clams is really the magic. Yes. That has to be reduced down and then folded into whipped cream, and that goes on the base of the pizza.
That clam juice goes into the cream. So basically, you got a clam chowder going underneath.
Correct. It's a great way to say it. The clam chowder that goes onto the pizza before it goes on, and then we fire roast broccoli rabe before service. So we just take raw broccoli rabe, olive oil, roast it in the wood oven until it chars and gets nice and black. We chop that up. That goes on the pizza. A little bit of chili flake, and then we chop the clams. The clams themselves, of course, you can use different types of clams, but the smaller the clam, the more tender they are. And little necks for us, because Long Island was where we get so many of these clams from, and all the way up to Cape Cod. We try and stay as local as we can there. We chop those up and then sprinkle those on the pizza. And that goes in the oven, and what ends up happening is a really delicate balance. The cornichon has to puff, otherwise the cream runs all off the pizza. Because what happens to whipped cream in temperature is it melts, and the air drops the cream. Everything liquefies again, of course, and the cornichon has to puff at just the right time for the cream to reduce. So now you have this swimming pool of cream that's caramelizing around the outside, or inside of the pizza, I should say. And if you miss that by any chance, let's say you didn't stretch the dough well, or you've got a hole in it or whatever, boom, that pizza's gone. You gotta take that out. But when you nail it and you get this reduction of the cream on the pizza, you get this pizza bianco without cheese, and it's just the cream. It's pizza con panna, and it to me it's the most elevated version of what maybe a modern pizza can look like. And I say modern because traditional is very much pizza margherita and kind of the derivations that happen from there.
Well, when I've had clam pizzas like in Italy, in Rome, or anywhere, I was always like disappointed because it would come with like 6 little clams in the shell, opened up, and I'm going, I want clams. I want clams. Festival. I don't want a clam tease.
Yeah.
And what you're describing is more what I'm looking for. And yet it's very different from, say, the Frank Pepe's famous clam pizza, where they wouldn't do. There's no sauce, no chowder underneath the clams. It's just oil and things, and that's really good also. But this sounds like you've kind of elevated it to make it your own.
Yeah, and there are lots of different versions, as you mentioned. Some have tomato sauce, some have nothing but olive oil and a squeeze of lemon. Some have cream. I've seen that people reduce the cream down beforehand and then put it on the pizza. What we found was that from a portioning standpoint, the ability to put that on the pizza, we needed something that was a little bit stabilized and was able to put it on. So whipped cream gave us that version of we could do a canal of it. You can portion it. You know exactly how much to put on. Whereas when you worked with the liquid side, it became very, very difficult for us to get that cornichon just right. Otherwise, the pizza came out too dry, or vice versa. You had too much liquid, and you couldn't actually keep it in the dough and control it getting it in the oven.
Well, Chef Ryan Hardy, you got me on a plane already in my mind.
I can't wait to have you.
This. Those of you who are listening or watching, we're talking about the pizzas at we're at
Pasquale Jones. Yeah,
this is Pasquale Jones. So which is next door to Bar Pasquale, where they're doing the more Sicilian style pizzas. One stop for a whole big tour.
Come check out both. And we have people that come and they sit down here, they order a bottle of wine. They're like, okay, we're going next door. We're going to drink some tequila and we're going to eat some Sicilian next door. I was like, great, come on in. Yeah, it's awesome.
Thank you. Mulberry Street is where it's happening. And Ryan, thank you so much. It's been great reconnecting with you after all these years.
Yeah, same.
About your adventures and where you've taken it. It's always great for anyone who's in the education side of culinary work to know that the students are out there doing it and using what they learned and actually, succeeding beyond all of our wildest imagination. So congratulations on all of that. And
thank you so much.
I will see you in person one of these days soon. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Pizza Quest. And we'll see you at the next episode.
Pizza Quest is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.